Hey everybody, welcome to my channel, The Magical Solution. My name is Leilani. It is Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are doing our thing with our book club. I decided not to go on TikTok tonight. I am just here on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. I don't know, I just didn't feel like being on TikTok today for some reason. The energy is a little funky over there. But before we get into the book, a couple of shameless promotions. Here we go. Thursday, which is the day after tomorrow, we are kicking off the summer semester of my spiritual development intensive program. So that means you have only a few days left to register for the class, whether you want to do individual classes or whether you want to do the entire series, completely up to you. But registration closes 1 hour before the class starts, and the classes start again this Thursday, June 13th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. Another shameless plug, really quick, is the merch store. Don't forget to stop by the merch store. This is yet another one of our t-shirts. I am part of the solution. Play on words, obviously. Anyway, those are my shameless plugs for today. Let us get to it. We are reading the compendium and digest of all of the works of Andrew Jackson Davis under the title Harmonial Philosophy. We last left off on chapter 5. So that is where we are going to pick up. I am going to share screen now so that we can get to the visuals here. Beautiful. Here we are. Give me a thumbs up if you can see what I see. All right. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay. So the title of chapter 5, Liberty and Necessity. Had to take a sip of water first. The question of free will lies at the root of all social reorganization, and it has been affirmed and defended by the profoundest and most spiritually illuminated minds that the human will is free and unrestrained. I propose, however, to prove that man is a being of necessity, a depending and necessary part of the universal whole. He enjoys a twofold relationship, physical and spiritual, to the universe. One is the connection which subsists between his body and external nature. The other is the conjunction between mind and internal nature, purity, truth, justice, or, in a word, deity. Were the mind intrinsically free, untrammeled by any physical object, element, or circumstance, the individual would be qualified to select his own autonomy, cerebral structure, temperament, and organic powers. But as it must be conceded that no being is at liberty to supervise the formation of his own body, so, at least in this respect, man is a creature of necessity. There is a kind of liberty involved by human individuality, and in this abstract and in this abstract sense, everything enjoys a species of independence. No single thing is, however, isolated from all else, for nature is an inseparable whole, with its parts essential to and depending upon one another. Notwithstanding the dissimilarity and apparent mutual independence of male and female, they depend one upon another and also upon the elements and means of nourishment which surround them in nature. So also is in proportion to a man's constitutional powers and qualifications, but not beyond them. He is capable of thinking or acting, and he can only be expected to fill the measure of his capacity. So, what Andrew Jackson Davis is trying to say here is that yes, we have free will, and yes, we have autonomy, but only up to a certain extent. Andrew Jackson Davis proposes here that, you know, there are two worlds in which we as spiritual beings function. We function in the natural world, and we are subject, therefore, to the natural laws. And therefore, when we are born with all the things necessary to for our adaptation to our environment. Um, and so we can only go so far as to how our body is composed. So right there, right off the bat, that is not conducive to this idea of unlimited free will and unlimited autonomy. Otherwise, we would have control and absolute liberty and freedom to be able to adjust uh, our own anatomy um, to kind of be the apex predator, if you will, or the best of the best, or the new breed, or the new evolution, or whatever. But since we cannot do that, Andrew Jackson Davis is saying here that this is one of those limiting factors where our free will and our free autonomy only goes to a certain point. And then we also, the second half of who we are, the other realm in which we function as spiritual beings, is in our internal spiritual realm, the realm of our mind. That, so far as we know, is something that we have as much control over as we put into it, but we haven't quite spoken deeply on it yet. As of right now, he's referring to the internal world as our relationship to certain large existential, ideas such as truth, justice, and God. Okay. And now, as regards the will in its superior relations to purity, truth, justice, and deity, it is held that man is situated intermediately between good and evil, that he has the power to reject the one or the other, and can thus determine his own eternal character, destiny, and situation in the world beyond the grave. We have seen elsewhere that he is the highest organization in the stupendous system of nature, that he lives, moves, and has being in God's universal spirit. Attractions, desires, and impulses are born within him. Those which proceed from his immediate progenitors are temporal, but those which he derives from his heavenly Father are eternal. He is not therefore situated between good and evil. He stands on the summit of creation, a little lower than the angels, requiring simply a constitutional harmony and a spiritual development to understand and enjoy their continued association. Okay, so what Andrew Jackson Davis is trying to say here overall is that now the internal worlds that we are a part of, this is where our free will and our autonomy come in terms of our ability to make choices that either contribute to highest good or choices that, are not so good. And ultimately, we are designing our character with each choice that we make. And then that character at the end of our life is weighed to determine what happens to our spirit in the afterlife. So while here in the physical realm, we may not have complete and utter control of everything because we are bound by the laws of natures and bound by the limitations of our physical body, our spirit, however, is an ever evolving spirit. And with every choice that we make, we have the ability to add to our character or stunt our character. Either way, this idea is that we can use the gifts given to us, but we must remember that the gifts that are given to us by our genetics, such as our forefathers, our ancestors, our physical body, etc., those are all things that will eventually get taken away. They'll still be passed down genetically to our next generations, but in terms of our physical body and the fact that we only live on this earth for about 80 years, right? Ultimately, all of those physical things about us will eventually fade. And the internal things, the gifts that were given to us by spirit, and the gifts that are consequences of our good character and the good choices that we make, will be with us forever. So when you elevate your spirit, the only direction it can go is from there. It can never digress. Okay. He is not merely a recipient. He is filled with life, motion, and sensation, intelligence. He is God manifested in the flesh. He is a son of the most glorious and high. And as regards his power of choosing between good and evil, he cannot select associations without knowledge of their character and influence, to obtain which he is subject to surrounding suggestions, both material and spiritual. Reasonable action or selection depends invariably upon prior experience and understandings, and consequently, the human mind, in order to choose intelligently between good and evil, must first ascertain by actual experience or by interior perception what good and evil are. I am led, therefore, to conclude that man has no absolute freedom of will, because it is not possible to be a free moral agent without having ability to distinguish between the seeming and the actual, the false and the true. Materially and spiritually, man possesses universal affinities which he did not create and can neither control nor destroy. He is compelled to act as he is acted upon, and to manifest character according to his constitutional capacity and social situation. Okay, so that is a really big mouth chunk right there. But ultimately, Andrew Davis Jackson is basically stating that in order to have free will and autonomy of oneself, you must know all the factors of every situation. Otherwise, you cannot make a free, informed choice. You cannot make a free, informed choice that will ultimately lead you to good character and good outcomes if that information is not present. And what he is saying is that in the world of nature, that information may not be always present. And therefore, the experience of trial and error, the experience of failure, and sometimes, if we're lucky, the internal intuitive perceptions of a situation can give us the information that we need to help us make good choices. But ultimately, they have to be filtered through certain perceptions and certain filters and certain lenses that each and every person will experience differently. Each and every person's lens is going to be different because it is a result of their capacity of understanding, right? Their intellect and capacity of understanding. It is also the result of their social situation, their upbringing, and their culture, and it is also a result of trauma and actions and things that had happened to that person through direct experience, right? So all of that informs the lenses of each individual person. And so therefore, even though they may be presented with information that will help them to distinguish between good and evil, that information is still going to get filtered through those lenses, and still the choice to do something good for your character and for the greater good of all will not by any fault of our own be tainted with what is just happening naturally in the world. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense to you guys. Um, but ultimately, that's his argument for why we don't have free will. Now, there exists, however, a species of freedom or independence in human thoughts and actions, but it is altogether comparative. A start in life is made from the same point, estate, or social class, but very different paths are trodden and distinct terminations reached. One person is in possession of a weak and combative mind, which leads one to murder. Another is vain, ambitious, and secretive, which things end in robbery. A third has some or all of these qualities, but accompanied by a prodigal benevolence, and as a result of which, under certain circumstances, he may sink so low in the scale as to become a beggar. While the fourth, without better external advantages, has a superior organization and more harmoniously developed faculties. He is industrious and above the temptations to which the others have yielded. Yet he may be thrown out of employment and at last may die of starvation. Now, the enlightened mind will perceive that these distinct paths and ends were of absolute unconditioned necessity. Society was the first cause of the disasters, while parents were the second, and for they imparted the dissimilarity of organization which caused dissimilar fates. It is a legitimate conclusion herefrom that an individual is accountable only according to his capacity. Man is both an actor and a circumstance, a cause and an effect. He should be treated not as a being having will and power to do that which he desires when and where he pleases, but he should be born, educated, situated, rewarded, punished as a tree capable of yielding good fruit only when it is properly organized and conditioned in a good soil. The doctrine of the free will or agency of the soul is contradicted by everything in nature and man. Every thought, motive, and deed arises from interior laws and combinations of physical and mental economy, which are inevitable and unchangeable. Beautiful. Beautiful. So he was basically just talking about just a little experiment where all of these individuals came from the same background, same education, same everything, but these internal tendencies caused them to go very different routes. And what ends up being the truth regarding, you know, our free will and agency is really dependent upon our internal capacity and our internal desire to do good, right? And so if we can, adjust our internal moral compass to doing things to increase right character and elevate the spirit, and we combine that with the physical and mental care and self care within our own daily lives and our own communities, then we will create habits and behaviors and characters for ourselves, the people in our lives, and the generations that we birth, and those will become inevitable soul contracts, if you will. They will become part of the spiritual genetics of your line and contribute to the whole. Now, the comparative freedom which man seemingly inherits is that of motion within the circle described by his capacity and degree of development. Beyond this, he has no more liberty than is enjoyed by a goldfish in a globe of water. But he is a part of nature and is designed to move as harmoniously in the great whole as the heart in the body. And this conception of his moral state is an unfailing source of consolation and happiness. It removes all doubt as to the ultimate issue of this life. It satisfies the soul that the Lord God omnipotent reigneth. It makes deity the sovereign ruler of human and angelic hosts, and it points to the reconstruction of society, to new methods of educating and punishing, or reforming, rather, the human race. It develops the religion of distributive justice, the spirit of compassion, the law of love, and morality of universal benevolence. So ultimately, what he is saying here is that um, when it comes to communal character, right? This when you're elevating self, you by consequence are also, elevating your community, and there's a symbiotic relationship happening, right? So when you have that happening, plus you are a person who understands that you are our harmonious cog in this wheel that we call nature, and that you are just as important, but also not more important as any other thing in nature, because nature is one of those things that's it's a very humbling. Nature is humbling. Nature says to you, you come down and spend time in my place. You hang out in the jungle with me for a little while, and you will be humbled. You will be humbled to know that although you are an elevated spirit, a child of God, you still must abide by my laws. And that is a very humbling experience. But if you can do so, if you understand that and you walk and move through nature in accordance and in harmony, while understanding your degree of development and surrounding yourself with those who are of that same degree of development and or better, then what ends up happening is you start to create community of true joy and resilience, and we can rely on each other, and it becomes a situation where the children all get raised by the community together, and it becomes a beautiful situation. It really, really does. And that all stems from just sitting in truth, knowing that you are taken care of, you are divine, you are God. Um, Asking nature to experience her realm, and you are doing so as a representative and as a manifestation of God. And you are more than happy to abide by nature's laws, and you are more than happy to have that relationship with nature and create um beautiful worlds where education and growth is never ending, and where love and morality and benevolence and compassion and true justice reign. What he's saying here is that that internal compass is where it needs to start, and then that internal compass in turn creates behaviors, and then those behaviors create ripple effects, and people witness those things, and you become a model of what it is that you choose to see in this world, and you surround yourself with what it is you choose to see in this world, and you elevate others and others elevate you, and it becomes a beautiful symbiotic relationship that is very possible. People are doing it all the time. We have so many little pocket communities all over the world that are doing it all the time. So it is very possible, right? And not once did we talk about money or jobs or this or taxes. None of that is in this conversation because it doesn't exist. Those are man-made things to keep people under oppression, to make them forget who they are and why they are here. Now, let's go back to the beginning of this chapter so that we can read the footnotes of this wonderful chapter. So the footnotes here say that these concepts in this particular chapter come from both the Great Harmonia in Volume 2 and also come from Andrew Davis Jackson's work, The Principles of Nature, in Part 2. Um, so what we find is that considering the inseparable connection which is sustained between the universe and deity, it is impossible to conceive of independent volition. Did such a thing exist, the universe would be disunited and the divine mind would be incapable of communicating life to its various recesses and labyrinths. The chain of cause and effect, the bond of unity, harmony, reciprocity, would be broken, and the universe would be no longer an organized system, but an incomprehensible ocean of chaos and confusion, right? So this footnote is explaining from the principles of nature how Andrew Davis Jackson came to this sort of conclusion that you can't have free will and free volition and free autonomy of the spirit and still have a God that exists within their creation, right? So God can't possibly exist in you and help to, guide you and be that inner flame, that inner guiding light, and yet you still have free will and autonomy, that would be a completely oxymoronic situation, right? That's oppositional in theory. However, I mean, I would disagree, but that's just me being the devil's advocate here. This is their rationale for their stuff. Okay. Now, this next section here says that many have assigned to the soul a faculty of absolute free will, a power to act or not to act in any specified manner, uninfluenced by interior or exterior things. Such an opinion is, of course, rejected, right? So, again, this is that thing of the anatomy of the spirit. How do you look at that, right? So, when you look at the soul, when you look at the spirit, is it a free spirit, an absolute free autonomous energy that can do whatever it wants? Or is it not just a byproduct of creation, but a byproduct of creation where the creator imbues it and is enlivened and helps to enliven it, meaning your spirit, your essence, your consciousness, your ability to be alive and awake and aware at this time, according to Jackson, is would not be possible if the flame of God, if the life force, if the vital energy that is God didn't exist within you. And at the same time, if that light of God, if that vital force energy that gives you life and gives you awareness and gives you consciousness, if that is within you, then your spirit has no free will. It has no free autonomy because you technically have this other consciousness existing within you. Okay. So that's that another piece of that rationale. Now, compare the corresponding condemnation of those who have given to the soul innate faculties perpetually disposed to wickedness and abomination, delighting to indulge in every species of evil, licentiousness, and seeking its own emolument by a sacrifice of all moral principles. The soul has no such inherent propensities, no desire to injure or dissemble. He is an offspring of the incessant and successive developments of those mighty attributes which together constitute the cause of all things. So, um, so essentially what that's saying there is that, okay, so then if God, is present, if the vital force is present within us, right, then how do we explain those people who have these innate sort of urges to just be awful people and to do awful things? And like, we can't possibly say that that's godly. We can't possibly say that God is allowing that to happen. And so if you're saying that God is not allowing that to happen, then on the contrary, that must mean we do have free will. That must mean we can make choices in spite of what God may want for us, right? As neither theology nor philosophy in the Orthodox schools on the one hand or on the other in authorized schools of teachings has postulated absolute liberty on the part of man, it will be observed that Davis grants here that which is necessary to the responsibility of human beings. If some of his statements read on the surface otherwise, they must be taken in the light of the qualification made above. It will be seen furthermore that the harmonial philosophy is essentially a philosophy of freedom, and that no loose terminology should be utilized to place its author in the category of a fatalist. This is expressed elsewhere as follows: it is certainly evident that there is a species of independence possessed by every particle of matter, but it consists only in the fact that forms have an individual being. In this sense, the term independence can be applied to all things, but speaking in reference to the whole system of creation, all things are parts of one stupendous whole, and hence is demonstrated the unity and dependence of all things. The conviction of the soul's independence arises from insufficient development of the faculty of wisdom, from misdirection of all the faculties, and especially from the prevailing superficial modes by which people are educated. So again, that's the author's opinion. So the author's footnotes, although he is trying his very best to be impartial, he is very much failing at it. So what he's trying to say here is that Andrew Jackson Davis, overall, although makes an argument for both sides, Andrew Davis Jackson's sole purpose is to be on the side of having absolute freedom, liberty, autonomy of spirit. Okay, he is very much about that, and not in the school of, well, there's no point, don't even try because God already knows, everything's already predestined, just don't even bother, just do whatever, because it's all going to be whatever, right? That's not his take at all. However, the author who is compiling all of this stuff, his footnotes read that that basically he's saying, like, look, Davis is wrong. I mean, you can't Davis he's basically saying, look, Davis is spreading this idea of unity and that the creator exists within all of its creation, and then at the same time is talking about freedom of will, and they just don't go hand in hand, and Davis is wrong. And that he's just not fully developed wisely enough yet, and blah. But I'll give the author you know the contrary belief is said to arise from confusing the actions of individual faculties without perceiving the relations which they sustain to external things, to the forms which they inhabit, or to one another. It has been held by some metaphysicians, metaphysicians, boom, especially Plato and Locke, that the free will of man is proved by his superiority over all other forms in nature, he alone being prompted to act, yet at liberty to refuse. But this hypothesis has neglected to analyze the soul's individual faculties and their specific modes of action. There is another argument on liberty and necessity, which may be summarized briefly. Man believes himself conscious of power to move according to a desire of the will. This power appears to be born of and governed by itself. It seems, therefore, to be self existent, but the supposed consciousness is deceptive because no one can perceive the relation between each portion of the soul. And hence, all conceptions respecting the inward self are intangible and unsatisfactory. It seems obvious that the argument cannot be pressed on either side of the consideration under view. Okay, so so what the author is trying to say here, um, to sort of argue Davis's point, right? So Davis is on that side of Plato and Locke, right? He agrees in this idea that, because man is basically the sum of all the parts, and not only the sum but the superior of all the parts, right? He mastered all the parts in order to get to where he is, right? The idea is to attain perfection and to constantly seek perfection. And so in Plato and Locke and Davis's eyes, man is that, sort of perfected creature in nature, right? And all of that is supposed to say, well, because we've perfected nature, we have free will. And what the author is saying is, yeah, that's cool and everything like that, but let's not forget, you also made the argument that man exists in both natural and spiritual worlds. You are talking about the mastering of just the natural world, but you're not taking into consideration the influences and the mastery of the internal spiritual world. And the truth of the matter is that the influence of the internal spiritual world, if not handled and correctly developed, the faculties correctly developed, will cause the internal world to have issues, like we saw in the previous example, where those men all came from the same family, same financial background, same upbringing, but their internal compasses were all fucked up, which ended up bringing them in all different directions, right? So that's what this argument is coming in, saying that, the free will and free that and free this makes sense in the macrocosm, but it doesn't make sense in the microcosm. And Davis is still on the side of that it makes sense on the in the microcosm as well, because although God exists within us, and although we may have internal spiritual tendencies that we are born with, either through, spiritual, um, either from past lives or from ancestral spiritual baggage or whatever, um, we still have to work on it in the same way that we would work on mastering the natural world. We just haven't gotten to that part yet, right? That's not the part that we've gotten to yet, but that is what Davis is going to essentially say. Um, the author right now is just putting up this argument, right? And that's that. What time is it? 9:30? Oh, we can probably do another chapter. Let me see how long this chapter is. Oh, it's short. It's super short. All right, so we could do this chapter real quick. Okay. So now we are on for real, chapter 5. Okay. What is truth? What is truth? Truth is the source of all eternal realities, the origin of all that is high, divine, and infinite. Absolute truth is immutable, the same yesterday, today, and forever. He who teaches a doctrine that is absolutely true proclaims an everlasting substantialism, which rests upon the authority of God. But he who proclaims something that is destined to become obsolete speaks of things merely and not of the principle which holds them together in harmony. When Newton discovered the law of gravitation and proclaimed it to be the world, he did not set forth a private and peculiar thing, but an absolute, an immutable truth founded upon eternal God. The question, what is truth, is the beginning, middle, and end of all inquiry. As the term is understood here, it might seem that an angel's mind could not furnish the answer, yet a simple and imperishable definition appears ready to our hand. So far as the world is concerned, the question is answered everywhere according to individual convictions. We must, therefore, on our part, disrobe our minds of all preconceived opinions, and remembering that while we may consult testimony to get at historical matters, perception for things external, and reflection for logical subjects, we must interrogate intuition if we would be enlightened upon religious or moral concerns. Intuition is the deepest source of truth, an innate power by which it is felt. In a word, it is the genius of the soul. Let us realize in the first place that truth is always simple, while error is always complicated. The one is easy as the growth of flowers, but the other is dark and mysterious. Moreover, truth is not susceptible of limitation. That which was true yesterday cannot be merely probable today and only possible tomorrow. It is God made, and the man who gives it an expression vocalizes the celestial life song of deity. If this be correct, then people have erred greatly in the use of language. We call it, for example, a truth that yesterday was cold, but the statement may refer only to certain localities. It would be far more correct to designate all occasional or local occurrences as facts and to make use of the word truth only in respect of that which is of broad, unchangeable, and universal application. In other words, let us assign to truth a position far above individual minds and circumstances, that it may be superior to everything but God. Now, if we adapt this view, we shall be, we shall rise superior to all forms of sectarianism, and pursue the golden pathway which leads the pilgrim eternally upward to the city of the living God. And now, as regards the promised simple definition, let it be affirmed that truth is the universal relationship of things as they are, while error is the interpretation of things as they are not. Woo! Say that again. Let it be affirmed that truth is the universal relationship of things as they are, while error is the interpretation of things as they are not. Woo! Wow. Let that sink in while I take a sip of water. Whew. As things are, so God has unfolded them. He is the author of the relationship between them, and he is therefore the truth. Of this universal relationship, it matters not how much or how little I know. If I comprehend the first principle which binds a piece of iron ore together, I know something of truth, and no human authority can make it more true. Though a wiser man may lead me to further truth in the same or in another or higher department of creation. Now, the question arises as to how we may know when we have the truth. The answer is to listen like a child to the subdued whisperings of the soul which God has given us. No man can enter the kingdom of truth and happiness unless he be simple of mind, by which I mean an honest, guileless, uncalculating, truth loving state, a state which, in the past and present conditions of human society, is about a frequently developed as a Christ is born. By willing strongly to see and feel truth, irrespective of creeds, men, books, or systems, you are certain to attain it, at least in such a measure as you can employ to any advantage. If you seek what is wonderful or mysterious, you do not seek truth. There are myriads of mysteries, but this is due solely to our ignorance of their nature and relationship. The great standard is that facts are things, while truths are principles. Things exist, and their right relation one to another is based upon and is the truth. From such relation, the music of harmony issues perpetually. Discord issues from error because the relation is wrong. See well to this doctrine in all departments of existence, and remember that now is the time to think, feel, and do right. By putting off till tomorrow, you defraud yourself of immediate happiness and do a similar injury to your neighbor. Let your understandings expand and thus obtain reasons for the inward hope. Remember always that marvels confound and stultify the intellect, while principles are certain to dignify the whole nature of man. Ooh, baby. This chapter was the truth. I mean, oof. So let's read these footnotes really quick. So this information was extracted from the Great Harmonia, Volume 3, and also from um, a lecture that he did, and it was compiled called the Penetralia. Um, and this is where a species of relative truth is recognized, being the measure of personal understanding. It is put forward as an answer to the question which stands at the head of this section, but it belongs obviously to another aspect of the subject and is not a definition at all, but the delineation of a point of view. The answer is this: Your deepest and highest conviction, that is your truth. My deepest and highest conviction, that is my truth. You cannot therefore follow me altogether, nor I you, but each may revolve in his own orbit to the other's benefit. According to one of the several definitions offered by Davis, truth is an inherent quality of the spiritual constitution whereby the possessor is empowered to feel legitimately and to think accurately. Inherent love of truth is an immoral love which, blended with an acquired power of attracting truth from without, transforms a soul into the image and likeness of the gods. Truth, according to the philosophical statement, is the absolute coincidence between object and subject, a concordance between things and ideas. Whence, however, Davis derived this remark, it is at best a confusing definition because such coincidence between subject and object would be much more than a concordance between the thing and the idea concerning it. It is obvious that the essence of truth escapes when it is identified with relation. An alternative definition is as follows: truth is that divine and eternal principle which fills, bounds, connects, and equals all, the cause and effect of infinite harmony, everywhere cohesive, consistent at all times, as in the material, so also in the spiritual realms of existence. There is an excellent distinction as follows: the cold, systematic discernment of truth is purely brain work and intellectual, but the warm love of it is spiritual, intuitional, and heart begotten. Mm. But the truth is also affirmed to be an absolute, not a relative principle. Truth is that principle in the presence of which nature, reason, and intuition harmonize, agree, and rejoice together as loving angels of God. Ah, absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. All right, guys. So that is everything for tonight. Um, Oh my God, Marius! Oh my God, it's been forever. I hope you're doing well. Happy birthday, my love. Oh my God. Wow. Happy birthday. Thank you for stopping by. Well, now that the chapter is over, the floor is open for questions if you have any. Otherwise, I'm excited to just hang out with you guys for a little bit. What have you been up to? How did you celebrate your birthday? I want to know all the things. All the things. I'm cleaning my little crystal skull right now. Isn't he cute? Isn't he cute? Little baby. My little baby. Giving him a good little polish. All right. Well, if you guys don't have any questions for me, then I would say that I will see you all next next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to all my things. Make sure you stop by my website to sign up. Um, what do you call it? Email subscription and to check out the merch store. But most importantly, good luck on your journey. Good luck on your journey, whatever it is that you're out there doing. Um, do it with all your heart and do it with, you know, good good thoughts always. And if you ever need any help, you guys know where to find me. And yeah, let's see what we got here. All right. All right. Well, have a great night, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. This is The Magical Solution. My name is Leilani, and this is how we grow. Have a good night.